welcome to this CV and cover letter webinar. My name's Hannah, I'm a careers advisor here, and I'm also joined by my colleague Diane, who's going to be in the chat box answering all your questions. So as we go through, please do carry on asking questions and commenting like you are doing in the chat box. That's really good to see. And Diane will definitely answer your questions as we go through today's session. So, by the end of today, hopefully you're going to be able to recognise what makes an effective CV and cover letter, but also understand what employers are really looking for when they're choosing between candidates using these kind of methods. And also, obviously, we want you to apply this knowledge to your own applications. So firstly, I guess the question is, what is a CV? A CV really is a personal marketing document about yourself. We want you to be proud of your CV. We want it to be something that stands out to employers and something that you're very happy to share with employers and with other people as well. But really, it's sometimes a first impression. So it's important that you get this right, that you show yourself well through your CV. So, like I said, it is a personal marketing document about yourself, but it's also showing that you are the right candidate for the role that you are applying to. So a good CV obviously will stand out from the crowd, but it will also be written with a specific job in mind. So if you're applying for a certain job, you will have certain things that you'll include, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. You'll also want to draw attention to those skills and experiences and achievements and everything that you've done, but also your potential. Generally, it's 2 pages. There are some exceptions to that, which I'll talk about in a minute. But really, we want it to be clear and concise so that you are giving that positive first impression for the employer. So there's no real right or wrong way of writing a CV, but there's lots of common areas that they will cover. These generally are your information, your careers profile, education qualifications, your employment history, some skills, and also some references at the end. If anyone is doing maybe more academic CVs, so you're applying for maybe a job after you've done your PhD, or you're applying for financial markets, those kind of things, they have different things, and I'm sure Diane will send more information about financial markets and also academic CVs, just because there's slightly different ways of doing that. But Diane will send more information in the chat box. Thanks, Diane. So your CV starts with your name. That might sound really obvious, but you don't need to put resume or CV at the top. It just needs to be your name in bold, and also your personal information as well. So potentially your home or your term time address, or maybe your home postcode, some kind of location is quite good, but definitely include your telephone number, your email address, and if you have a LinkedIn as well, include your LinkedIn account in there as well, just so an employer can really quickly and easily contact you. Next comes your profile. So Charlotte, you're asking, what is a career profile compared to an employment history? So a careers profile is basically a summary of your CV. Employers do not spend long on CVs, on reading CVs. So this is kind of the summary to say, this is who I am, this is what I have to offer, this is what I'm about. So it generally serves 3 functions. It talks about who you are, your key skills, and what you're looking for in a role or the sector or something like that. So stating who you are, thinking about those descriptive words like motivated, multilingual, organised, those kind of descriptive words are really good in there. But also your skills, so what you have to offer, so actual skills that you have in there. So this one talks about working with others to achieve goals, and working under pressure, relishing challenges. These are really good skills to include. But also this can be tailored each time you apply for a job. So it's talking about specific things in relation to the skill that the employer is looking for. So say they're looking for someone who's creative with good team working skills and organised. If you would describe yourself of those, it's quite good to put in your profile because it's saying right from the start, this is who I am, these are the skills that I have. So that's really beneficial. Thanks, Diane, for that finance CV info. So your profile, that is your profile. It's basically just a summary of who you are and what you've done. Next comes your education. So you need to have your degree and whatever you're currently doing on there, so whether that's a master's or a PhD or whatever qualification you're doing at the moment. If you're in first year, I know you've only done like 3 weeks of study, but even if you're in first year, put your degree on there. Obviously you won't have grades, or you won't have obviously end of degree grade, like a lot of the final years will be able to predict. But definitely include your degree on there and put the dates when you're studying. So if you're in first year, you need to say when you're finishing your degree. So I think that's 2023 or 2024. Feels like a long time away, but I bet it's not. This also in here, you can highlight your academic achievements. So talk about any relevant modules that you've studied, if you've done any years abroad or study abroad, if you've done any projects. This is one of the places that you can put that information. And I would also include your education prior to university. So if you are applying for jobs in the UK and you have UK qualifications, put your A-levels and your GCSEs on there. If you're first year if you're an international first year who didn't do A-levels or GCSEs and you're applying for the UK, include what you did prior to this year. So whatever you did before university, whether that's foundation courses or whatever, include that as well. This just shows an employer kind of background. Some employers do look for A-levels and GCSEs if you're a UK student or have done those qualifications. Next comes your work experience. So this is the real big bit of your CV. So this, you can include any work experience, so it doesn't have to be paid work experience, formal work experience. It can be things like being in society or doing volunteering. As long as you can demonstrate why it's relevant to an employer, so thinking about those transferable skills, then you can include it on your CV. So we want to see your employer, the job title, and also dates that you did the role. But really, what you did, the skills that you developed, and the impact that you had. And a really nice way to do this is through bullet points. So literally just putting some bullet points of what you did, skills that you developed, and the impact that you had. I would say personally, I like that all to be in one line. So for example, you could say, I don't know, if you worked at Subway, let's use Subway as an example. I'm guessing you've all been to Subway, maybe on campus or elsewhere. If you worked at Subway in the shop, you could say managing a busy queue at lunchtime rush hours, that's what you did. Developing communication skills or time management or whatever, in order to like give, I don't know, positive outcomes to the people that were coming into the shop. So that is me just babbling a little bit there. So you would write it a lot better than that because you'll have time to read and think about it. But you can see you talk about what you did, the skills that you developed, and the impact that you had. So a lot of people just put like roles in there. If it's something really relevant, we want to know about your transferable skills. So think really about those transferable skills, which you can find really easily on you can Google transferable skills, or you can look for within jobs that you're looking for. There'll be loads and loads of information on there to think about what kind of skills employers are looking for the jobs that you're applying to. But also just think, what did I develop from this role? What skills did I develop? What impact did I have? And that will really help you for not just your CV, but other applications as well, which is great. A nice way to do this is, you can see here, the bullet points, it's talking about what you did, but also it's starting with a really positive word. So devised, interviewed, created, completed. You can see how those bullet points are really strong. They're not saying like, I did this, I did this, I did this. You start in devised, interviewed, prepared, analysed. Like, these are really positive words. You can see loads of them on the screen, but if you just Google action words or active words, action verbs, whatever, they'll come up. And there's loads that you can include in there. And it's really nice for an employer, if they're reading through really quickly about your CV, just to see, oh yeah, that's some information, that's a skill, that's a skill, that's a skill, which is really nice to see. Has anyone got any questions so far about work experience before we move on? No? Great. Diane, I also wonder whether you could send the CV guide through the chat. If you are someone who likes to see things and to see actual examples, then really good. Equally, if you like reading things as opposed to listening to me talking, the CV guide's also a really good thing that you can read. And then I'll also send you the cover letter guide. Well, Diane will send you, thanks Diane, the cover letter guide when we talk about cover letters as well. Through that. The next thing that could come onto your CV is your additional skills or your interests. So where is your work experience? You're saying, this is what I did and this is the skills that I developed. Your additional skills section is saying, this is a skill that I have and this is the way that I've developed it. People who have lots of work experience and lots of additional things like interests and skills and stuff, they will not interest in skills, interest in extracurricular activities like sports teams or societies. Some people will do this in the additional skills section. So you can see on the screen, it's talking about motivator and team player. So they're demonstrating that they're a motivator and a team player by talking about being in the basketball team as a social sec. So it's demonstrating the skills that they've developed through something that's not really uber relevant to the employer. But it also shows that you have a life outside of your studies as well, which employers like to see. Something that I see quite a lot on CVs is just like a list of skills. For me, and I think Diane's the same, and a lot of employers will say the same, that's just kind of like an empty claim. What are you saying? How can you demonstrate this? So if I told you that I'm a good team player, you haven't seen me work in a team, so you probably wouldn't trust that I was a good team player just by me saying that I'm a team player. Whereas if I said I'm a good team player because I was on the basketball team, which I wasn't, but if I was on the basketball team, you might be like, oh yeah, maybe this person does have good teamwork skills because they've done this thing. And that's kind of what you're showing to an employer through this section as well. And then the final thing that comes on your CV is your references. So you just need to simply put references available on request. Back in the day, quite a few years ago, references, you needed to put the full kind of name and contact details and everything of references. But now we've kind of moved away from that, which is quite nice. So you just need to put references available on request within this section. So I don't know if you can see this on the screen. Hopefully you can. So we've talked about lots of things about CVs which are good and bad. Have a look at this CV on the screen, and I just want you to give me some suggestions about what you like and what you don't like on this CV, or what you would change. Just in the chat box, that would be great. Not like. So this is a CV that we have made up, so don't worry about offending anyone. Yeah, there's some really good suggestions coming through, so it's laid out really clearly. It's definitely easy to read, and you can definitely find the key points, which is really, really nice. Yeah, the education should come before the volunteering section. Yeah, I would say because you are currently doing your education, so you're doing your degree or whatever you're studying, that's the most important thing. That's probably the most relevant thing that you've done. So it needs to come at the top because it's the most important thing in there. Yeah, it spans 2 pages. It's fine to span 2 pages. The key skills could be summarised in the experience section. I'm just reading this. So I think, yeah, they've repeated themselves. So they've talked about the NCS, for example, in the key skills and in the volunteer experience, combined them. Absolutely. Mohammed, I'm interested by your comment, profile is not important. Could you just give me a little bit more information on that? Anything else that you think that you like or you dislike about this CV? Something that I don't really like about this CV is that they've got their personal achievements. Oh, sorry, there's loads more. I wasn't scrolling down. Yeah, okay. So, Mohammed, if you're applying for financial markets, yes, your profile, sometimes you don't include a profile for financial markets. Generally, I'm talking about a general CV as opposed to financial markets, because there are some slight differences in there. Yeah, it does look too spread out, I agree. Definitely trying to take up the space on the key skills section. Yeah, I would definitely develop some of the other sections as opposed to the key skills section. Definitely. The career aim part is not necessary. Yeah, they've called it a career aim as opposed to a profile. There's also different names that you could call it. I prefer profile. Yeah, the list of GCSEs isn't necessary. You could just put 10 A star to C, including English and maths. Absolutely. I'm just making sure I scroll down now. Yeah, it doesn't need a references on request, although you can include that. So it's kind of up to you whether you include that or not. Some organisations will want that, some will not. So it's fine to include, but it's also fine not to include. Yeah, she could combine a volunteer and work experience and talk about the skills she gained from each activity. Absolutely. So she hasn't really talked about the skills. That's completely right. She definitely could develop some of that stuff in there. So thinking about the skills that she's developed. You can include two sections. So some people choose to have work experience and volunteer experience. Some people have relevant experience and other work experience. It's kind of, it doesn't really matter within that. Yeah, she needs to talk about more what she did, what she personally did. Absolutely. And also, if you look at the work experience, her starters are worked included. That's just so dull. It's a really dull starting. She does better in the volunteer experience, but yeah, think about that. And also in the career aim, I am this, I am this, I am this, I am that. Her startings are just so boring. Yeah, yeah, definitely more action words. Definitely Matthew. We've talked about GCSEs, and you don't need to list all your GCSEs. The other thing that I think in this section is the difference between the personal achievements and the key skills. I think the key skills she should include in her volunteer experience, but I think her personal achievements, I'm like, what do they show? Like, why does it matter that they've got Gilda Guiding UK's Baden Powell badge? Why does that matter? Actually, if you combine those personal achievements with the key skills section, say maybe teamwork, through gaining the Baden Powell badge in Girl Guiding, I worked in a team to develop this project or do this thing. That would demonstrate teamwork. So I think she could combine those personal achievements and those key skills. Definitely. That was really good. Anything else from anyone? There's one really huge thing missing from this CV. None of you have pointed it out yet. I don't know if any of you have spotted it. Yeah, she is missing her degree, which is such an important thing to include, especially when you are studying at Lancaster. You need to be proud of your Lancaster achievement. Getting into a top 10 university in the UK, huge achievement. People will be impressed that you study at Lancaster. Absolutely. So if you don't have much experience, like John's asking, Diane might also give you an opinion on this, so I'll let her also carry on typing. But you can talk about your things that you've done in your degree. If you don't have much experience, think about how you can gain that through societies or sports teams or volunteering. There's loads of volunteering opportunities at the moment, especially given COVID. Things that you've done in your degree, projects that you've worked on, get some work experience, some part-time jobs, anything like that is really good to include. Fab. Anyone got any more comments before we move on? Great. Fab. So some of you asked why CVs are rejected. So these are the main reasons why CVs are rejected. So obviously poor spelling and grammar is really, really important. So you need to make sure that your spelling and your grammar is right. Some employers will automatically reject you if you've got a couple of mistakes in there. So just get it checked. Just check your English and your spelling and grammar. But also your presentation. So one of the things actually that I didn't mention in this one, which really bugs me, is the changing the bullet points. The dates are all over the place. Some of them are like different things. Some of them are in like, so the work experience is like the month and the year, and then the voluntary experience is just the year. The bullet points change. So some of them have got the dash, some of them have got the kind of like bullet point thing, the circle. That really bugs me. If someone's out of line, if the lining's not right, as someone who reads a lot of CVs, which an employer would do, anything like that automatically without even reading your CV would make me not necessarily want to hire you. So think about your presentation, think about your lines and your line spacing and all that kind of stuff. It is really, really important thinking about that presentation. But also it's not relevant to the role. You might have loads of great experiences, but if they've asked for certain skills, you need to include those skills. And if you haven't done, then they might not hire you because you can't demonstrate that you have the skills that they are looking for. And also thinking about that a little bit more, that you're not actually evidencing your ability. So you might say skilled in teamwork, but how can you demonstrate that you're skilled in teamwork? How can you show that skill? So I don't know if you've ever heard this statistic before, but there's some research done recently that an employer reads a CV for about 6 seconds. So it's really, really important to make that positive first impression, like I was just talking about, with the layout and the spelling and grammar and the making sure you're concise and relevant and well structured. All that is really, really important. For me, I don't know about you, Diane, I'll give you a minute, but I can probably read a CV in about 20 to 30 seconds. And that's probably how long I would spend looking at a CV. Diane, I don't know if you have any differences.
No, I'd agree with you, Hannah. I think if it looks really good, then you start to read it in more detail. But if it doesn't look good, you have a quick glance and then put it to one side.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely. And that's why that layout thing is so important that we're talking about, just about making that good first impression. Thanks, Diane. So like I said, presentation is really key. I'm presuming that none of you are going to use word art. I really hope none of you are going to use word art like this from like the early noughties. And equally the kind of aligning and stuff, your skills, using tables, just don't look very good. The other thing just to highlight in this section is in the UK, you don't need to put your photo, your nationality, your date of birth, your marital status, anything like that you don't include on a CV in the UK. However, in different countries, there's different rules and conventions. So for example, in Spain, you have to include your photo. In the UK, you don't include your photo. So it's really important to do your research with this. So check out the requirements of the specific country. You can check the embassy website. There's loads of stuff online. Going global is good. So also check careers pages on the university websites in that country as well. That might help you. So CVs, my top tips for CVs. My first top tip is your file name. If you're anything like me, I save mine like Hannah Allison version 1, final, this one. And I have this like massive long title because I've written about 100 different CVs. Just when you're applying to something, save as. So save your CV as your name, maybe the job that you're applying to. Just make it really clear, that title. Don't just put CV, because CVs, there's so many CVs and it might get lost. My second top tip is focus on those professional skills. So think about how you can show and demonstrate that you have the skills that are relevant for the role, but also tailor your CV to meet those roles that you're applying to. So think about the skills that they're looking for. They'll be quite clear in what they want to do. So if in what they want you to show, so make sure you include those. Make sure it's easy to read and you can find the information as well. That's important. But ultimately, we want you to make that positive first impression so that an employer will want to invite you to the next stage of the process. Whew. So CVs, that's a lot of stuff that I've just covered quickly. Has anyone got any questions? I know Diane's been answering them. Thanks, Diane. Diane, is there any more questions that I can answer?
Nope, there are no more.
Great, thank you. So if you do have any more questions, please do just comment in the chat box and we'll answer them for you. By we, I mean Diane will answer them for you. Thanks. So the next thing is a cover letter. So I'll be slightly quicker with this one for cover letters. So a cover letter is not just a rewrite of your CV. Your CV is about you, the job description's about the job that you're applying to, and the cover letter is kind of linking the two together, showing who you are in relation to the job and what you have to offer in relation to the job. So it's really about creating that positive first impression again, so that an employer want to invite you to the next stage of the process. So structurally, a cover letter is normally just one side of A4. Anything longer for you guys, generally as a student who's graduating, generally it will be for one side of A4. But it does need a clear structure with information and evidence, using those action words that we've talked about earlier. It also needs to be in the same font and style as your CV, so it looks like one package, not just two separate things that you've done at different times. You'd title your cover letter in bold, so you put like dear such and such person, and then you'd put regarding whatever role you're applying to. There is quite a set structure, so often you have to put your address on the right hand side and the company address on the left hand side, just like you would do if you were writing a letter. Make sure you avoid dear sir or madam. Use your initiative, so contact the company, see if you can find out who the hiring manager is, see if you can find that information online. If not, call up the company, see if you can ask that information. That's just a really positive thing. If you can't find it, maybe put dear recruiting team or hiring manager or something that's not dear sir or madam, because it's quite a structured way of doing it, but it's a bit too formal, that way of doing it. So I can try and find that information. And also close your letter, yours faithfully, yours sincerely, and obviously write your name at the end. So there's quite a few different ways of writing a cover letter. I'm going to talk you through my favourite way. This is the way that I find the easiest and I think is the most effective. However, different people have different ways of doing this. They'll all kind of talk about similar things, just in a slightly different structure. So it's about finding the one that's right for you and right for the companies that you're applying to. But all of that stuff is kind of included in what I'm going to talk about. So the first thing you need to do is talk an introductory paragraph. So giving an outline of who you are, the position that you're applying for, and where you saw it advertised. Really simply, that's all you need to do. I think the next section that's the most important to do is why this employer. So right from the start, you are saying, I want to work for your company because it shows that you've done your research and it shows that you have that connection with the company. So for example, if someone contacted you and said, I'm interested in going to university, can you help? You might be like, well, yeah, I guess I can help. Like, I'm not really sure what I can say. But if someone contacted you and said, I'm interested in applying for Lancaster, I love Lancaster because, I don't know, things that you love about Lancaster. So it's a top 10 university. I like the campus location. I like that it's surrounded by countryside. I like that there's ducks around. I like Sugar House. I like things that you personally like about Lancaster. You're kind of doing the same thing. So you're making that connection. Right from the start, you're saying, hey, you like this, I like this too. You think this is good, I think this is good too, which automatically is going to make an employer want to read and find out more about you, because you're kind of creating that shared bond through that first paragraph. So this is an actual chunky paragraph. You do need to write a few lines about this. Show that you've done your research the company. What is it that actually interests you about that company? Is it the corporate social responsibility? Is it a project that they've worked on? Is it that they've been in the news recently? Think about how you can demonstrate that you have an interest in that company and show that you've done your research. The second section, which doesn't need to be as long, is why you're applying for that particular role. So what is it about HR that you're interested in? Have you studied it in your degree? Have you done some work experience? What interests you about that specific role? Are you interested in, I don't know, finding out more about people in the workplace? That could be something that you could talk about. So why this role? That needs to be a little bit less than the why this employer section. And then the third section is why you. So give some details about the experience that you've got, your skills that you can offer, your education. And this section is quite easy to write. People find it tricky, but I think it's quite easy to write because all you need to do is look at the job description. So whatever they are asking for, you need to include in this section. So if they're asking for someone with, I don't know, a passionate individual with strong communication and team working skills, you just need to write about that. They've given you a list of things to write about. It's really, really easy to do. Talk about how you can demonstrate those skills. And then finally, give any practical information. So maybe when you're finishing your degree or when you're available for interview. But really the important thing is finishing with that polite thanks and positive reinforcement. So thank you for reading my application. I look forward to hearing from you soon. Something that ends a cover letter in a positive way. Another thing that you can do is speculative cover letters. So a speculative application is where you contact a company, even though they don't have any opportunities on offer, and say, I'm really interested in working for you. This, again, is really important. It's kind of like a cover letter, but it really needs to be specific to that company, as all cover letters do. So find the right person. This is vital for a speculative application. Find the right person, give them a reason to read your letter. Talk especially a lot more about why you're interested in that type of work and that company, just like you would in a normal cover letter, but show that enthusiasm and the motivation to show that you are interested in the cover letter, in the company that you are applying to, but really keep it brief at the point in this section. There's another example of a cover letter on here. This structure is slightly different. So this is showing that they understand the job, then talking about their work experience, then talking about the content that they've done that's relevant, and then talking about the company. So that's just a slightly different way of doing it. But really, when you're writing a cover letter, you have to write a new cover letter for each role that you are applying to. I know it takes ages, I know it's a pain, but it's so much more valuable to write a new cover letter for each job that you're applying to. And specifically think, does it match the job? Is it professional? Is it clear and well written and succinct and all that kind of stuff? Why have you written that cover letter? And really focusing on why is it relevant to the role that you are applying to. So some people choose to have their cover letter on one side of the screen and a list of all things that you need to include, and you just tick off when you've included it. Some employers will use algorithms that read your CV and your cover letter. So they'll look for it, something online will just pick out the keywords that they're looking for, and then you'll get passed. So it won't even be a human reading this. So those keywords are so important to include within your cover letter and your CV as well. So what makes a good cover letter? I've talked about this before. This is so important. Make sure that it's aimed at a particular job. So one job, write a new cover letter for each role and each employer that you are applying to. Also that it complements and expands on your CV. So sometimes I get asked, can I repeat myself? Yes, absolutely repeat yourself, but don't use the same phrase. Don't copy and paste from your CV. Make it relevant to the role. Again, relating it to the job description, the person specification, and highlighting those things that they are looking for as an employer. Really focusing on those skills, the experiences, the qualifications, whatever they are asking for, you need to include within the section. And also show your motivation and your enthusiasm to apply for the role, but also in general. Why are you motivated? Why are you enthusiastic? If you just write, I have done this, I have done this, I have done this, I have done this, that's a dull thing for an employer to read. So show that motivation and the enthusiasm. But also, obviously, make sure it's written in clear and accurate English, and also make sure the employer wants to meet you. That's ultimately what your cover letter is doing.